Okay, great. Thanks so much for all being patient as more attendees joined. And thank you again for taking this time to be with us and learn about how radio broadcasters, and more specifically, account executives, campaign and sales managers, admins, and also even management at broadcast radio stations now have a way to effectively measure online response to on-air advertising campaigns. I am Ashley Bailey, the product marketing manager for Attribute, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. I joined Veritone in fall of last year, coming over from the Wazi Digital acquisition. And while media and entertainment has been my world for the last few years and high-tech software for the last decade, the radio industry is still pretty new to me. So I'm really excited to continue to learn about radio, the technology in the space, and the ever-evolving use cases. I'm also super excited to be working with Michael Kennedy, who's sitting right next to me. And he's the director of product for media and entertainment at Veritone and the product manager for Attribute. Michael has been with the company for going on 4 years now and has a long history in helping startups and enterprise organizations improve operational efficiency and build transformative products. Today, we'll be covering how you, as a radio broadcaster, can climb out of the abyss and connect elements of your non-digital radio broadcast to digital and use real data to advise your advertising clients throughout their campaigns on how to best use their ad dollars and in turn accelerate purchases. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty details of Attribute and our newest features, including one really pretty avant-garde one, I'd like to go over a couple things. We really would like to hear from you, so please, if you have questions, comments, experience, or ideas, feel free to send those via the questions chat box that's located in the GoToWebinar dashboard, and we'll get to all of them at the very end of the session. Everyone who is registered for this event, so you, will be sent an email later this afternoon with a replay link to the webinar. So if you're multitasking while you're eating your lunch or breakfast or catching up on email, or you want to send this to your colleague, no worries, because you'll have the replay. So without taking up more of your time, let's get started. Before we dive into Attribute and give you the details on our newest features, we wanted to give a brief overview of who we are as a company and what we do for some of the folks that may be new to our community. So right now, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Ashley, for the great introduction and lead up to today's webinar. In late 2014, the genesis of the company was to provide Veritone One, a media agency of Veritone, with a solution to track native in-program advertising on broadcast media. To solve for this, Veritone pioneered a simple way to use AI to digitize content through natural language processing, think of speech to text, and take action on the output through intuitive applications and services. Since that initial use case, our platform has expanded significantly to satisfy a multitude of use cases, not just for media and entertainment, but across other industry verticals as well. Veritone has a growing presence nationally with 6 offices in major cities and a developing footprint internationally with an office in London. We've amassed over 380 employees, most organically and some via acquisitions through our journey. And we've developed a framework that harnesses AI to satisfy a myriad of customer needs in an ever-changing landscape. And today, as an illustration, we're going to focus and talk through how we're leveraging AI and data to solve for offline and online attribution.
Specifically in media and entertainment, we are there for organizations at each phase of the content lifecycle. So whether it's footage from an elite sporting event, B-roll, press conferences, feature films, still images or poster art, or audio from a news or radio program, our media and entertainment solutions support these key areas of the ecosystem, all the way from create to analyze.
So this slide is actually really interesting. And from our view, I think there's numerous industry segments for which AI can be accretive. Now, admittedly, not all of them will be as welcoming as others, but over time, we think that those barriers will erode because of the contribution and role that AI can play in our society. We see Veritone's aiWARE plugging into all of these verticals eventually. However, our concentration at the moment is on media and entertainment, government, and legal and compliance.
Thanks, Michael. You know, I look at this statement and it's so powerful, maybe even a tiny bit scary, but above all, it's profoundly true. Michael, what are your thoughts when you see and read this statement, we now live in an age where data and analytics influence everything?
I think it really rings true for me. In today's informational era, this claim is really an ode to Darwinism, where data insights offer survival in today's extremely competitive landscape. Your competitors are using data, and so should you. Otherwise, you're definitely at a clear disadvantage. It's also important to remember that data isn't just quantitative, it's also qualitative. It's all the ways you go about measuring performance, tracking progress, gauging success, and that isn't always done with hard numbers. And lastly, data should be used to drive decision-making on all levels, not in order to help you chart the course to success and optimize, we think, at the very least.
Exactly. Without data, it really is a guessing game. Advertisers will ask, how do you know if my ad campaign was effective? And it's extremely difficult, nearly impossible, or at least it used to be, to articulate the impact and begin to measure correlations. Of course, this happens in other mediums too, like television, but we'll save that for a future discussion. So, Michael, many of us have seen this quote by David Field, which he was quoted saying last year at last year's radio show. Radio doesn't have an effectiveness issue, we have an attribution issue. So aside from attribution, how do you explain how we validate advertising that's not digital?
There's so much truth in this statement, and I think it probably resonates with many of you on today's webinar. Bridging the offline to online chasm that so many broadcasters and advertisers face is a real obstacle. Trying to measure something that isn't evergreen like terrestrial broadcasts, which inherently lacks digital elements, and correlate it to online activity isn't an easy feat. But admittedly, there's intelligent ways to go about measuring that and stringing together various data points that help bind this information together. Veritone Attribute is able to bridge this chasm by using technology to create data points from commercials or in-program advertising and organic utterances and pair it with web analytics. So let's spend a little bit of time talking through that in a bit more detail. So there are three primary data sources that power Attribute, and let's start with the station playout. So station playout is metadata that's extracted from either an automation system or even a traffic system that just has really rich insight into all of the descriptors related to the events that are clearing through your broadcast. And that could be ads, that could be songs, and that can be programs. And it has everything from start-stop time to the duration, the station and call letters, and any sort of other information such as ISKI codes and ad ID. So that's really rich information. The other part that we incorporate with this is the ingest of an unadulterated broadcast stream. So having that stream come in and leveraging various forms of artificial intelligence, and again, think speech to text and natural language processing, we're able to unearth insights and make searchable content. And so we leverage both of those data sets together. It kind of marry the data so that way we get richer insight into what's actually coming through that broadcast. And in doing so, we're able to plot all of those ad occurrences or mentions and utterances of our brand as timestamps with data points. And then we overlay on top of that an advertiser's Google Analytics or web traffic data. And so that gives us a holistic view in terms of not only when ads are clearing, but also what the associated and corresponding web traffic looks like. So we're able to do effectively attribution on that. And that's essentially what Attribute is doing. And there's various ways that you can perform kind of that analytic analysis, and that's through placement. So what stations and sources might be the most optimal, what time of day in terms of day part might be the best, or day of week. Web analytics to get some general semblance in terms of what that advertiser's makeup and composition of their traffic looks like. And then lastly, creative analytics gives a full breakout of everything that's coming through that playout system in terms of where we might be able to optimize based on creative. And then all of this can be consumed through reports in the application in the form of PowerPoints and PDFs.
Thanks, Michael. That's great. Before we dig into the demo, I'd like to call out some of the key features and two new ones that are incredibly important to the market. While we can show customer behavior impact analytics from pre-recorded spots, we can also show impact from live reads and organic mentions as well. Michael, can you tell everyone a bit more about how that works with the live reads and organic mentions?
Yep, sure thing. So I just spoke to this a moment ago, but a prerequisite for this is a combination of the station playout data and a stream to the unadulterated broadcast. Without getting too much into the technical nuance and complexity, we leverage that station playout data to time synchronize those events, so the start and stop time of an ad, for example, to the ingested broadcast to identify where the advertising is in that content. Once the content is categorized with known ad locations, we can filter out those results in order to distill live reads and in-program mentions.
And just to reiterate to everyone, this is in near real time, which is pretty impressive. I also love how simple the reporting is too, but we'll get into that in the demo. So now we have two really amazing recently launched features, which I've been alluding to this morning. I would do a drum roll, but I'm just not that savvy. Okay, so the first one is custom attribution time span. What this means is that we've broken the industry standard, and Attribute now allows authorized users to configure the attribution time span and set it for any time span rather than the standard 8 minutes. So if a broadcaster and their advertiser know that an advertisement is being aired in a location where the morning drive time is usually around 15 minutes, they may want to set that attribution window to 22 minutes to allow people to get to their destination and interact with that ad on the website. This is a huge, huge benefit to advertisers given how different each target audience and region is. In addition to custom attribution time span, we've also just launched period over period comparison. This new feature makes it really easy in our intuitive user interface to select and compare specific date ranges and get even more of an idea of what's working. The graphs comparing data points such as number of visits, visits per hour, visits by date, percent changed, for those 2 periods allow users to show how a particular call to action may have driven increased traffic to the advertiser's web property. And this really leads us to this next point that I want to emphasize, and that is, while at the end of the day, we surely all want to make more money and generate more revenue, Veritone Attribute and these key features are giving broadcasters the ability to improve the relationship with their clients, and this is critical. At the end of the day, we are humans, and what we need in order to feel our money is going to the right places is to feel we're working together and feel the tangible results of our work and pivot as needed. So with that, now I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he's going to walk us through a demo.
All right, let's transition into the application. So this is Veritone Attribute, and just to get everyone oriented, assuming that this may be your first time seeing the application, this is a very simple, intuitive application to use. So on the far left, we have folders which are intended for account executives or campaign managers who have their respective advertisers within them. So the advertisers that they're working with, that they essentially want to perform this sort of analysis on. And just going a little bit deeper into that. So let's jump into this McDonald's advertiser. So just to get you oriented, McDonald's is the advertiser. We have our spotlight metrics up here, which give us some understanding in terms of how performance looks for this advertiser over a specified period of time. So here we default to last 7 days, but you can see there's a combination of different preset periods and date ranges that can be selected, of which when selecting, that data will update. Web Analytics is really a hub for the user to actually get some understanding of the composition of the advertiser's traffic. So this is perhaps the first instance that the account executive or campaign manager has ever seen what the makeup of that advertiser's traffic looks like. So here we can change the various state ranges and then start to get some understanding of what the visits look like as an aggregate by hour. So we can see that 8 a.m. looks to be the peak in terms of when this fictitious advertiser is actually driving the most traffic. Additionally, there's the ability to further dimensionalize that, not just by aggregate time, but also by day of week. So we can see that over this 30-day period, it looks like this has the highest concentration on Wednesday at 8 a.m. And you can get that heat map sense of everything, so that way you can try to optimize spend and media buying across when the visits actually take place. And obviously there may be some correlation to why there's an uptick here, because maybe that's when most of the media buying is taking place. Getting into day part analytics, so this helps provide a view into that attribution where we're taking the visits from when an ad cleared on that web property and assigning it to that ad. And so we get some sense of not only the ad visits, but also the unique ad visits or users that have come from that. So this graph behaves in the exact same sort of capacity, and you can get a good general sense in terms of where the attribution is taking place. Not only that, but you can also see against industry day parts, so the morning drive and the midday, and get a really good understanding in terms of kind of that representation of where ad visits are taking place, and as well across day of week. So you can see that it's tiered down for this example. Placement analytics helps give insight into the format, so the instances of live reads and pre-recorded spots, and which ones are performing the best. So here we see ads. So these are the number of either live reads or pre-recorded spots or organic mentions, along with the number of ad visits. So how many visitors came to that web or came to a website as a result of that ad clearing in a specified time frame. And it's kind of a tease to the custom attribution time span that we'll get to today to showcase. And then our efficiency ratio, which shows what one might be more optimal. And in this example, we see pre-recorded spots is driving effectively more ad visits for each ad that clears. In terms of placement, we also want to be mindful of the source and station of what's clearing. And so we have that same sort of metric and efficiency metric to gauge performance. Now, this is a really useful one, creative analytics. The word that I'm looking at here is McDonald's. So I'm pulling in anything that has the root word of McDonald's. And so we can see all the variations over the last 30 days of which ads have cleared through either the traffic system or the radio automation system. And I get some definition in terms of what the ad type is, whether it's a pre-recorded spot or live read, the duration that's coming from that system, the source or station of which those have aired, along with the metrics in terms of analyzing that performance. And then I can have that same sort of view in terms of the pie chart, breaking down what that makeup looks like. And then also a good way to analyze what duration based on that creative is the most fruitful. The very last aspect of this in terms of the reports is the ability to generate a report, include your information to get it timestamped, or excuse me, to get it stamped onto or pinned onto the report, and then a very simple way to get that report through either a PDF or a PowerPoint. Now, I'll go through the flow and the setup of an advertiser. It's really straightforward. In this case, we're going to create an advertiser. We'll call it Comcast as an example. I'll assign it to the respective manager of that advertiser. I can also create a new one if I need to. And then this is what we wanted to really showcase today in terms of the custom attribution time span. So I'll show what this looks like from a user perspective, like me right now as, let's say, an account executive creating this advertiser Comcast. At this point in time, I have control where I can actually specify what I want that default time span to be. So the industry de facto for radio, for the most part, has been 8 minutes. And we realize that there's benefits, and it's advantageous to allow the user to collaborate with their advertiser and kind of set what that default time span should be. So now you as a user have the latitude to set that in accordance to what is the appropriate window of attribution or time span. Additionally, and this is what Ashley touched on earlier, is the ability to do custom attribution time span. So here, a user, for example, that wants to account for the morning drive time where people are in transit and may not be as responsive, can actually set up a custom time span. And so let's say it's 7:30 to 9:30, and I'm interested in applying a 15-minute period, or I can actually increase that, let's say, to 20 minutes based on users' responsiveness to react or respond to an ad that they heard in their car, let's say. And same thing with afternoon drive. And I can keep adding as many as these as I want and have full customization in terms of what time span makes sense. And so it even recognizes when there's overlap between an existing time period. Simply go on to next. And this is the breakout and categorization of either looking for pre-recorded spots, which are getting fed to us from that automation system or traffic system, or looking against live reads, which is the combination of ingesting that unadulterated terrestrial broadcast and coupling that with the pre-recorded spots to filter out those commercials. So in this example, I have my stations, so whatever stations are relevant for this advertiser. And I can simply come in here and type in Comcast. And I'll get a quick little preview of all the different ads that have aired through Comcast. And I can simply just click contains Comcast, and I'll pull in everything that contains that either on the front of it or back of it. So the suffix or the prefix, because we know that there's a lot of different variations of which these ads can come through in terms of their trafficking name. And I get a quick little preview in terms of what's here with the programs that it aired on, the duration, along with the timestamp of those. And I can keep augmenting and adding to that search as much as I want. So the next part is leveraging live reads. So in here, I simply look for Comcast, and it behaves the exact same way with the preview, except it's cross-referencing all of that playout data and traffic logs and scrubbing any of those ads out. And I simply hit done. And if I'm a subscriber of aiWARE Essentials and I have access to Discovery, I can simply click a watch list if I'm already monitoring something with diligence in Discovery. And then lastly, I just simply plug in the information of the advertiser I want to send it to. I can personalize a note if I want, and we're off and running. That advertiser will get created. It's assigned under my folder, and all the advertiser has to do through a simple workflow is OAuth permission into Google Analytics. And then that data will start pouring in. So in terms of the spotlight features, let's go through that since I've given a pretty comprehensive walkthrough of the application. So I showed the custom attribution time span. I want to show how we help provide organizations control around that. So if an administrator, which is a specific type of role and user, is assigned that permission, they can come up here, and only administrators will see this. Normal standard users will not see app configuration. Administrators will. So as an administrator for my organization, I can come in here. I can upload my org logo, of which will get appended to the reports. But the part that I want to showcase is the custom attribution time span. So here you can see as an administrator, I'm allowing users to override whatever settings might be here. Now I can either enable this or disable it. If I disable this and I change these settings and just make whatever updates I think are appropriate, this will be standardized across my entire organization, meaning that every user that creates an advertiser this will cascade down to their advertiser, and it will be enforced, and they won't be able to override what's there, although they'll be able to see it. Or alternatively, and that's what I was showing earlier, is that when this is enabled, this will show on the initial creation of that advertiser, but users can, at their discretion, go ahead and modify it as they want. And this behaves no differently than what I was showing earlier, where you can create n number of day parts and you can get as granular or as broad as you want with those, and simply just save those, and those will be enforced. And just to reiterate, then when I come in here and I edit my advertiser, you can see the custom time spans, assuming I save those, would be here. But because it allows you user override, and these were ones that were already set up during the creation of this, that's what's here. So that's us highlighting the custom attribution time span. I also want to spend some time talking through the comparable dates. So this is effectively period over period analysis. And where this is really advantageous is if you're trying to demonstrate lift. So an example is to showcase a period of which radio is absent. So let's say in the month of December, there was no radio campaign for your client, and they want to use that period to analyze. Well, you simply click compare dates, and I can either select up here in terms of the period that I want to analyze. So it could be the last 7 days or last 30 days or last 90 days. And we'll automatically just feed that information into here. So period 1 is basically the last 30 days. Period 2 is the prior period to that by 30 days. So day 31 to day 60, for example. And I can also just come in here and specify what date ranges I want to analyze. So if I click into this, I can just highlight the period of which I want to analyze. And what's really nice about this is we provide annotations in the legend to show when you have Google Analytics data for your advertiser, when we recognize spot data for the things that you're tracking, along with the live reads. And so you can analyze a period where there's no radio. So effectively, there aren't any pre-recorded spots, let's say in October, and use that as the baseline and compare that to a period of which radio is present. And so you can start to do that sort of customization. And when you do that, you can hover over all of these data points and you can see the date range for period 1 that I'm analyzing compared to period 2. And we also recognize not only the visits, but the percent change. So you can start to perform your analysis over time and see what periods might be optimal. And ultimately, this is to demonstrate lift for the advertiser and through your broadcast. One other element that I want to speak to is not only providing this sort of comparable analysis at an aggregate hour view, like what you're seeing here. So we're looking at the last 30 days, and you can see that it's 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., so forth. We also support now the ability to do trend. So you can actually look at this by date. So this is looking at a linear date frame or time span for the specified period here. So it's another way of analyzing it. Instead of just collapsing all that data into an aggregate hour, we're actually able to spread that across as if you were in Google Analytics and look at what that attribution looks like across different periods of time by doing that sort of benchmark analysis. So that concludes the parts that we wanted to showcase in terms of the custom attribution time span, and then the period over period analysis by using the compare dates feature.
Sweet. Thanks so much, Michael. This is truly one of the most intuitive products that I've seen in my career. And to know that it's leveraging AI, it really just blows my mind. Okay, so please let us know what questions you have. I do see that some have come through the chat screen, so we'll go over those, and feel free to continue to send some in, and we'll take them for a few minutes. So the first one I'll hand off to Michael, and it is, okay, so how many advertisers can they set up?
Yep, definitely a relevant question. So the beautiful thing here is there is no limit in terms of the number of advertisers or campaigns that you want to track. We firmly believe that in order to support your clients and your business, that you need to have the flexibility and support the ebbs and flows of your business in terms of how many clients you're bringing on board. And so we don't ever want to be restrictive in that sort of capacity. And therefore, we just allow for you to create as many advertisers as you want. So the short answer is there is no limit.
Super.
All right. So another one seems like So this seems like an account executive, someone like me at a station, could manage this for themselves. Is this true?
Yes, that is definitely true. It's really a self-service application. It's super easy to set up new advertisers. So yeah, once it's in your hands, it's really easy.
All right.
All right. So here's a question about pricing. So you want to cover that one?
Yeah, pricing is actually really straightforward. We definitely pride ourselves in simplicity, not only in terms of our applications, but also in terms of how pricing is structured. So pricing is really determined at a station by station level, and it incorporates economy of scale, where if you have additional stations, a market, let's say, or even a group, or you want to couple that with other applications and services of aiWARE. So for example, Essentials, which includes discovery and libraries and CMS, obviously that would help reduce the price. And so for those that are curious about pricing and want to get some understanding for their particular station or market or group, reach out to info@veritone.com.
Okay, perfect.
Another one, let's see, is the custom attribution time span is really cool. I'm curious if there are best practices around that. Is there a cap on how much time is too much time? That's definitely a good question.
Yeah, that is a great question. There are definitely best practices around it. It's really an opportunity to collaborate with your client. Just keep in mind that the more traffic and the more time, it will eventually weaken that correlation. So if you set it to 60 minutes, just you have to keep in mind that that's going to allow other traffic from different sources to be visiting and interacting with that ad that may not be correlated to what was broadcasted. So just work with your advertiser and keep that in mind. And now that you have this custom one, it makes it a lot more tangible.
And Ashley makes a really good point there, because with this custom attribution time span, obviously you have the discretion to open up that time span as wide as you want. But as she mentioned, the larger that period of time is, you're essentially allowing for potential extraneous factors that might not be related to the clearance of that ad in as well, that will be accounted or attributed to the clearance of that ad. So it's really a collaborative discussion that you should perhaps have with your advertiser and your organization to determine what's appropriate on a advertiser campaign by campaign basis.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Michael.
Another question is the only definition of attribution is the website?
I think it's if, yeah.
If the website was visited within X minutes of the ad running. So yes, at this point in time, the model of attribute is to recognize the clearance of ads, be it live reads, organic mentions, commercials, and couple that with web traffic at this point in time. Now we are working on, and this is kind of a tease in terms of a roadmap, but we're working on including additional data sources. So we realize that Google Analytics may not necessarily be all encompassing in terms of where that traffic may go. Obviously there's social platforms out there. There's other forms of analytics software that might be incorporated as well. And so we're working on supporting various different ways to capture and recognize where attribution may be taking place, not just against a website.
Perfect. Here's one other one. When it comes to the custom attribution window, how do you account for the overlap from other mediums or stations the client is running on if they are buying heavy on other stations in a market?
Yeah, I mean, this is a relevant question and a very good one. So this one actually has a lot of complexity. The challenge is when a spot airs and you hear it from a terrestrial broadcast, so obviously we're rolling out any sort of streaming audio, but if it's coming from a terrestrial broadcast, that ad or that clearance has no information on it, right? It's ephemeral. It's just in the air. So in order to actually disambiguate between various stations, let's say, Comcast is running on a particular station, but also running on a host of other stations, like what this question is alluding to. There's no real way to discern that because the ad from a terrestrial perspective doesn't have any metadata, any information on it that says that, right? So it's inference-based modeling that's used to be directional, and over time you start to really get some semblance of what that performance looks like, because it's not just one ad that's airing, it's a number of ads, and so you start to get an illustration of what performance looks like using that inference-based modeling. So good question, appreciate you asking.
Right, exactly. And I don't see any more questions for us. If you do have other questions, feel free to email us at thatinfo@veritone.com or submit a query on our website on the Contact Us page. So thanks so much. We really appreciate you again for taking the time to be with us today and participating. We really hope that you found this insightful. Please reach out to us again if you have questions. And Thanks again. We hope you have a good rest of your day.